Hello. Okay, that's good. How's everybody doing? I know it's been a bit of a long day, and we're here at the final breakout session for the Scaling Atlassian track for today, but it's a very good one, one we're really excited about. We're going to have Matt Dorr from LinkedIn talk about how Data Center has helped him sleep better. But first, I'm going to give just a quick fun fact about Matt. Matt is a really hands-on kind of guy. So much so that he actually accidentally delivered his first child, or third child, sorry. But with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Matt, so let's hear it for him and give him a round of applause, and here it is.
Good afternoon, everybody. So the follow-on fact to delivering my third child accidentally was that I picked him up, I wrapped him up in a towel, presented him to my wife, and her first words to her third child were, "Not the white towels." True story. So, thinking about sleeping better, children. The story so far. 2 years ago at Atlassian Summit in San Jose, where I know I recognize faces from, we had Dan Harter and Arnie Matz, both from LinkedIn as well, talking about getting ready to move to JIRA Data Center. That's Dan in the center, my manager, and that's Arnie on the side, looking very excited. This presentation is the story of what happened next. We went live with 4 JIRA nodes in our data center instance on September the 8th, 2017, and that's what we've been using since then. This was a big deal for us, and a lot of this talk is talking about why it was such a big deal. But before I get to that, the prequel. Like any good movie, there's a prequel. And the prequel of LinkedIn moving to JIRA Data Center is called The Day My JIRA Caught Fire. This is a true story that you're going to hear. So it was a few years before that last summit talk that I was talking about, and I was consulting, working at LinkedIn, and I was helping them get ready for a large JIRA upgrade. This is what we had at the time. So remember, JIRA Server, bare metal, 256 gig memory, I think 15, 16 gig heap, 32 CPU cores, and a terabyte SSD storage. So it was a fairly hefty box. We were using the SSD storage for the Lucene indexes for performance. And for those of you who don't know, the Lucene index is what JIRA actually uses for searching. When you run a search in JIRA for issues, it doesn't go to the database and look up the information there. The information from the database has already been put in what's called a Lucene index, and that's what it searches. Good. I'm glad I see lots of head nodding there. So this is what I did. Linux command line, copy your source directory to your target directory. And this was on the big, fast hard disk, and it wasn't anything that special. I've run this command before. I'm thinking, probably most people in this room have run that command before, except this time what happened was the disk controller caught fire. Well, all right, technically it smoked because the data center hadn't gone through and blown all the dust off all their boxes as they should have done. But it smoked a lot. I mean, the temperature was like going up, and the data access was somewhat erratic, to say the least. So what happened? Well, failover. We had to fail over our JIRA to a different JIRA server on the other side of the country. So the good news was we'd planned for this. It's disaster recovery. These things happen. And the bad thing was that it was a long day. It takes a long day to do these kinds of decisions, failover, failing over, testing your failover. And in the end, I didn't really sleep very well that night. Now, if we had been using JIRA Data Center at the time, we would have had far fewer failovers. We would not have had to failover in this case. We could have just kept using the other 3 JIRA nodes that weren't smoking for our JIRA cluster. And again, I would have slept better that night. Now, I want you to know that this is the most difficult picture in this whole presentation. Do you know, finding a picture of a bed that's appropriate for a whole family audience is just not that easy. Anyway, that's a side effect. So that prequel of the day that my JIRA caught fire was part of why we upgraded to JIRA Data Center. So our current version we're running is 7.6.9, which is an enterprise release, of course, because we're careful. The hardware, in fact, is mostly the same as the hardware that we had on that day, with the dust blown off it a bit better. So we've got four of these large servers that we're using for our JIRA instance, the JIRA nodes within the data center cluster. Oracle JVM 1.8 and G1 garbage collection. A few more statistics about the LinkedIn JIRA instance. It's big, 4.3 I was told today, 4.3 million issues. So we'll be reaching 5 before the end of this year, 5 million. We have over 1,200 custom fields. Now, we actually consider that to be pretty good because we used to have 1,600 custom fields. And we went through a significant effort to remove custom fields from our JIRA instance. I'm not going to diverge too much, but if you have a lot of custom fields, you generally have a very large Lucene index as well. And we have about 5,000 daily users. Interestingly, most of our traffic load is not from humans. It's from service accounts, scripts, people doing other things with JIRA data. I'm torn about this. I think it may be the sign of a mature tool when the bulk of your data access comes from other integrations. I'm not sure. But I do know that we have over 70 gigabytes in our Lucene index files. And this is enormous. When you talk to people and they say, you've got a very large index, how big is that? It's 70 gig. And they say, well, that's OK if it's read-only. And you say, no, 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 no. This is being updated every time an issue is added. Every time someone comments, there's an update to these enormous Lucene index files. So we are very interested in what's coming up in JIRA 8. We've heard a lot of discussion about the size of the index files, how it's going to change the time that it takes to do a full reindex. We're hoping this will drop to half the size with JIRA 8. We'll see. So in summary, it's a big and busy JIRA instance that we're running. Now, even after we had moved to JIRA Data Center, we still had at least 3 nagging questions. Atlassian told us that everything should just work, right? But I needed to be convinced. Like many of us here, I'm an engineer at heart, and it's very much a show me, prove it to me, don't just tell it to me. So these 3 questions we had, taken from the abstract of this talk. Users care about the first question, do we see fewer outages? The admins care about scaling of JIRA Data Center. And the CFOs care about the third question, is the cost worth it? So the first question, did we see fewer outages? Well, yes. OK, that's the answer. We've had 1 major unplanned outage in 18 months. And now I'm very worried because I can find no tree or wood to touch. I'll just tap here. It's been great. In addition to fewer outages, this has had another effect within LinkedIn, which is that the reputation of JIRA changed. It took a few months, but it was very real. People always have something to complain about. There's always a service within your organization that people say, oh, such and such a service, yeah, well. And JIRA used to have a bit of that taste about it, but it doesn't anymore. Sometimes you measure things by the lack of complaints, and we just don't get complaints about JIRA not being there. Whenever somebody comes up and says, oh, is JIRA working? Is there a problem with JIRA? We're like, nah, probably not. It's probably your stuff, I'm sorry. Silence is golden when it comes to complaints. So, yes, we saw fewer outages, and we continue to do so. The next question we had was about the scaling of JIRA Data Center. So the way that all of these data center products work under the cover is each of the JIRA nodes have their own copy of these very large index files, the Lucene index files. And when you make a change on one node, that change happens in the Lucene index file on that node. And then it's also written into the database. And all the other nodes in your cluster, in your data center cluster, read out the change and make the same change in their Lucene index. Now, that approach, using the database, was giving me some pause for thought. I wasn't sure whether the throughput would be sufficient, whether there'd be any other issues around that. So we did our own testing. And the answer to the question, of course, was Yes, JIRA data center scaling does in fact work with that architectural approach. There was another effect, which is obvious in hindsight, but was a pleasant surprise at the time, was that things such as our page load times became less spiky. So what do I mean when I say spiky? It's traffic that looks like this. If you imagine this is your page load times, now you notice this is what's called a real chart because it has values on the y-axis. It's not a marketing chart, which would not have axis. Anyway, these are examples of page load times. So you can see there are some very slow page load times, and then a few fast ones, and then a few more slow ones. And it turns out it's the slow stuff that people remember. People don't remember all the times you served up their page to them lickety-split like that. It's the fact that once in a minute they had to wait and wait and wait. What they want to see is page load times that look like this, where everything's just a lot more even. In fact, the mean for both of those two sets of data that I just made up and showed you there are identical. But this is what will make people like your product here. More consistent page load times will make your apps seem faster. And the fact that JIRA Data Center is spreading out your traffic over multiple nodes means that your page load times are less spiky. People like that. So I said that we had satisfied ourselves that it was going to scale with this replication through the database. Just a few small points about that. What we did was, well, multiple instances of JIRA, of course. You have a UAT instance, the user acceptance testing, a staging instance that's got the real live snapshot of your live data in there. And then we used various cunning load tests where we would make multiple changes in one node and then see how quickly those changes were propagated over to the other nodes. I think we used Gatling for that one. JIRA performance tests, JPT, is also a tool that is available from Atlassian. So we've answered the first two questions. Did we see fewer outages? Yes, we did. And it changed the reputation. Could JIRA Data Center scale? Yes, it does. The third question is about the cost. Is the cost worth it? Now, you notice I say, is the cost worth it, not was the cost worth it? Because data center products you pay for by the year and by the number of users. So it's not like the server model or cloud. It's its own model of payment. Yes, we think it was worth it. Now, I had to put a big proviso in here. I'm not the CFO, thank goodness. But we do think the cost was worth it, based on the impact of the changes to our 5,000 regular users. Now, if we start thinking about cost in other ways, I'm not going to think about it in dollars and cents or any other currency because, well, frankly, I'm not allowed to release that kind of information about LinkedIn. What does a JIRA outage cost you, though? If you start to just sit here and think, oh, yeah, last time JIRA went down, what was the impact on you and your team and your company? Well, the easy answer is it's always more than you think. Right? It's not one of those things that just goes away and heals itself. I like to use the analogy that working without JIRA, it's like going to work and then discovering you've left your phone at home. And not only that, you've left your wallet as well. And you're sort of like, well, yeah, I can get through the day, but what happens? I won't be able to do this. It's just difficult. So another way of looking at it is how much does a day's JIRA outage cost when you're working at scale? If you're working with data center, you probably are working at scale because you're not doing this for your small little startup. You're doing for a big organization that really depends upon it. You think about all those people who use JIRA and who are now blocked because you haven't brought JIRA back up for some reason. It's all on you. So here's somebody who is blocked by JIRA being unavailable. He looks pretty sad. I think he's about to give up and go and get a coffee. And that's his whole productivity for the day just blown. He's just going to sit and drink coffee until he goes home. I reckon it costs you more than a developer for a year. If you have JIRA down for a day, that's like not getting the value out of a whole developer. It's a big chunk. OK, so the three questions, those nagging questions we had, we resolved them all. And the answer was yes, yes, yes. I can't see everybody, but put your hand up if you're surprised by me saying that. Anybody thought I was going to say no? No, okay. Let's talk about some more strategic stuff. No, let's not. Let's talk about tactical stuff first. The couple of things that help us to run JIRA Data Center. So, Atlassian documentation is pretty clear about the changes you need to make to move from server to data center. And it's quite clear about the files you have to put here and there. But there's not so much yet about what do I actually do? What are my regular, recurring, operational things that I have to do with data center? And these are the sort of things that we've worked out ourselves, and other JIRA admins have worked out as well. The first one we call rolling restarts. And this is an important idea for us. So no service is perfect. Changes are inevitable. And before data center, I would have to restart JIRA for some kinds of outages, some kinds of changes. And restarting JIRA Server, of course, causes an outage. Now, with Data Center, I can make changes to JIRA, the application, and even to things like the JVM and the operating system without an outage for my customers. So how do I do that? Well, here's a picture of a data center cluster. On that side, you've got users, and their requests are all coming into the load balancer in the middle, which sends it off to one of the 4 JIRA nodes over on the right-hand side of the screen. So what we can do is we can look at one particular node, like that one, and we can remove it from the cluster by saying that it's not available. Now, this is the slight lie, because actually JIRA is still running on that server just fine. And in fact, it's all still sending its information to the database and synchronizing too. But it won't be receiving any user traffic. So I get to do what I want to do to that server. And I take it down, I restart JIRA, I do something, and then once it's finished, bring it back up and reconnect it into my cluster. Great. Nobody noticed. I did all that thing. Now that one server is fixed. I can go on and do the same set of operations on the other 3 hosts. Users shouldn't see any impact on their JIRA traffic unless they were in the middle of some operation on that one server. And the way you get around that is you just give it long enough to let the traffic bleed off and complete. So, takeaway tip, rolling restarts, as I've just described, is how you use the power of JIRA Data Center to avoid the outages. And this idea of rolling restarts also applies to Confluence and Bitbucket. Let's look at another operation I want to do. Let's say I need to reindex the whole of JIRA. Remember those 70 gigabytes of files? So this can take a while, or so I've heard. In fact, it takes 9 hours for our Lucene index to do a full foreground reindex. Quite a while. So again, those Lucene changes in JIRA 8 are going to make a big difference for us. So what you can do with JIRA Data Center for this kind of operation is you take one of the nodes out of the load balancer cluster, you say it's unavailable, just as we did before in the animated slide, and then you run the full reindex on that node. No users are locked out, because there's still 3 other nodes that they can use just fine. Then when your reindex is finished, you can copy an index snapshot from that node over to the other nodes, and you can take them out as well. So that way, you can do a full foreground reindex without locking users out of JIRA. This is a massive change from our experience with JIRA Server. So that was 2 points in the tactical use of JIRA Data Center. We're going to talk about things more strategic for the next few slides. We're going to think about JIRA changes. So kick back for a moment in your head. Forget all the things you've been focusing on in the next week or the month, and think, where am I a year from now with my JIRA instance? Well, It's quite easy, really, isn't it? There's going to be more of everything. There's more issues. You know that. More JIRA projects. Everybody's requesting a JIRA project. We get a project request per day at LinkedIn. And a lot of that is really down to education. We need to explain that, no, multiple teams can share a single JIRA project. We're also going to, well, we're going to get requests for more custom fields, except that mostly we just say no these days. Now, and you'll see why in a minute. 1,200 custom fields, that's plenty. I was talking to a fellow this afternoon, 3,800 custom fields, which I think is a personal maximum that I've ever heard of. I've just got to, wow. So we say no. Now, the fact that JIRA is going to grow over the next year, and when I look a year from now, we're going to be at 5 point whatever million, that's a good problem to have, right? It means that your tool is being actively used in your organization. It's a success. Now, uncontrolled growth, though, not so good. This is a picture I found of Kowloon Walled City, which at one time was the most densely populated place on Earth. So there were more than 30,000 people in 26,000 square meters. So if you do a bit of math or maths there, they were more densely packed in than we are all in this room, and they lived like that. So pretty scary. It no longer exists, apparently. It got torn down. But one of the reasons that it grew like this was because there was no governance over it. It is crucial to have a brief but complete governance document for your JIRA. Doesn't matter if it's JIRA Server, JIRA Data Center, or even really JIRA Cloud. Whatever it is, you've just got to have some way where you can say, this is how we're going to run our service, and then I get to say no about things like custom fields, because I can point them to the governance document and say, look, we've discussed this before. We're not going to change our minds here, no matter how important you say it is. Well, all right, that's almost mostly true, isn't it? There's always one person who comes in and says, yeah, you know, I'm the favorite project of the whole company this year, and everybody's paychecks depend upon me getting this one custom field. And you're like, oh, do I have the energy to point them to the governance document? So mostly we get to say no. So growth is good. Uncontrolled growth not so good. And we've talked about changes, governance documents. Let's talk about outages for a few slides. So this volcano picture, it's beautiful, but someone is having a very bad day here. You just know it. What kind of outages are going to happen to our JIRA instances? Well, database, it's just another service. There's nothing magic about it. You can have your replicas, your failovers, but there's still chances that you're not going to get the JIRA is going to not get access to a database. Authentication. Oh my goodness, isn't this nasty? Suddenly your Active Directory server's gone away. Bam, all your JIRA admin accounts, you can't log in as them either. So that's a bit of a problem for you to fix it. Network storage. If that goes away, you're probably going to find people saying, you know, where are my attachments? Where are they all gone? So these things happen, and they're bad, though, of course, not as bad as a volcano, you hope. But what I find interesting is how people plan for these outages and how they handle their plans when they do occur. Because this is like the volcano. It's not a if, it's a when, and there's no due date. Here you go, little one-slide detour. The way to get around that authentication server problem is you should always have a JIRA admin user defined in your internal directory. Yes, I see some nodding heads. Excellent, good. And don't use admin for the password, please. Oh. All right, planning for those challenges. If you're serious about your service and supporting it, you really do have to have a plan for each of those challenges, each of those outages. And this is one of the things that helps us at LinkedIn with those. So monitoring. In a data center instance, this is going to be up to you. Atlassian is not going to monitor your JIRA data center or any data center instance at the moment. They do, of course, do cloud. So first of all, your Java virtual machine. Isn't that a cool graphic? I'm going to do it again. I just like this. I'm always impressed when somebody else did this for me. I think it was Brian, our lead. Oh, I've screwed up there. No. Okay, go. Right, garbage collection logs. You got to know what's going on there. Heap size, your out of memory errors, any other errors in the logs. You just need to capture it and count them. The REST APIs, two of the REST APIs that I find particularly useful are the troubleshooting plugin, the first one. That's the health check API. And then secondly, the index summary, which in a data center instance will tell you about the difference between your Lucene indexes on each node. JIRA 7.6 also has a JMX interface that you can use to get a whole bunch of information out of your JIRA nodes, and that's also been extended for JIRA 8. This sort of information and our monitoring is something that I would always look at before I did any of those short-term tactical rolling restarts, because there's no point doing a rolling restart on something that's broken in a way that you didn't even know about. So use the REST APIs. Next one, the third kind of monitoring, is we use synthetic monitoring. So we have a setup at LinkedIn where, and this is our real data, that's why I had to hide some of it. Every minute, for each JIRA node in the data center cluster, we create and update and then delete an issue. And this is so that we see exactly what the users are seeing or what they're experiencing. And you can see there's one color per node in our instance, and there's a small difference between them. Who's worried about that small one? It's not actually that spiky if you look at the y-axis. Again, you notice I have real numbers on the y-axis, which is always more interesting, I find. What I could have done is make it go down to 0 on the y-axis, and then you would have seen how few spikes there are in that data. This is our own monitoring app that we have, but there are, of course, plenty of others available to choose from in the market. So JIRA Data Center helps me with the high availability, that is fewer outages, and with the scaling, that is less spiky traffic. Some other things that help me sleep better, not being alone. Don't laugh. I had to stick very closely to the script here, Brian told me. Atlassian does 3 other things to help me not be alone. Premier support. These are my friends. These are the immediate problems. They know what they're doing. They're the next level of support, and I just turn to them anytime there's an unexpected case with our JIRA. It may be that I can go through the log file and work out myself what's gone on, but I would rather start by having Premier support look at it straight away, and then I'll do my own investigation. I trust their deep expertise. They found things in JIRA logs that I have not found in 15 years of using JIRA. They're good. So another Atlassian thing that helps me sleep at night are technical account managers. These are the people who, for a price, will help you with your long-term plans to avoid the immediate problems that you had to go to Premier support for in the first place. So TAMs provide us roadmaps, an inside connection to Atlassian developers, and all the other parts of Atlassian. And they're basically the face of Atlassian for our company. They've got a deep sense of caring about each of their vendors. I mean, yeah, we're paying them, but there's also a relationship that goes beyond the dollar amounts. That helps me sleep better. Third thing that helps me sleep better is Atlassian solution partners. These are the people who will sign the paperwork that allow them to log in directly into your JIRA and help you. And that kind of paperwork is what helps our legal team sleep at night. So knowing that I have a large community of people who will help me with things like upgrades, migrations, custom app development, and general cleanup of JIRA or any other Atlassian product, that helps me sleep better. Now, you'll be happy to hear that this was the pre-antepenultimate slide, which makes this the antepenultimate slide. We're getting there. Some of you are working this one out, I know. But disaster recovery is still up to us. So this morning I posted a post on the little Atlassian app that said, I've only got one cute slide in the whole presentation. This is it. This is the cute slide. There's no kittens, no puppies. But this guy looked so happy about what he was doing with his tool that I thought, he had to go in there somewhere. Disaster recovery is up to us. Concerningly, somebody asked me today what had he been doing with that tool and what was the splatter all over his hand, but I don't want to speculate there. So remember that volcano, and that you don't get due dates for that kind of outage, that kind of disaster. That's what's up to us. So in summary, we talked about the fiery prequel, when the disk controller caught fire. That was a tough day. We talked about those 3 nagging questions that we still had when Atlassian said you should move to data center. There was the, I'm getting there. There was the second one is did it scale for the admins? The first one was, come on, help me out. Somebody tell me you were listening to the first question. Some space. Fewer outages, thank you. Somebody was awake at the front, that's great. And then was the cost worth it? The CFO question. We talked about spiky traffic and why people remember the worst of what you've given them, not the average or the best. And we talked about some of the tactical approaches, the tactical operations like rolling restarts and re-indexing, and then the scary outages, and how monitoring will at least tell you you're having a scary outage. So it turns out it takes a team of people to really help me sleep well at night when I'm being a JIRA administrator. On the penultimate slide here, you will have fewer outages if you use JIRA Data Center properly. Takes some time to get used to it, but it will do it. It does indeed make a huge difference to our experience. And it helped me scale JIRA. As I said, we're at 4.3 now. We're expecting to be at 5 before the end of the year, and 6 sometime next year. So this is part of what lets us have confidence that JIRA is the right tool for us to continue to use and helps me sleep better at night. The cost was well worth it. Thank you.